Some thumbs up or seeing the screen okay? Excellent. So, and we're advancing the screen okay, and that's always the next question. Here we go. Okay, so you said we want to keep muted, that's fine. So show of hands or put into the chat. Curious who in the crowd and me joining us today grew up with one of these in their homes with the parents or grandparents. I'm seeing a lot of good hands. This is the one that I had growing up myself. You can't really see it. Okay, here we go with my nice virtual background here, but there you have it. And they do have an update version now that's has a lot more words on it. But so for those who did not, this is a pushka where you put your change and to support the work of putting down roots in the land of Israel before even the establishment of the state over 120 years ago when it was founded. Another well-known piece of Jewish National Fund is planting trees. So some of the question, hands or in the chat, if you have stories or have either sent or received a tree certificate for all occasions in someone's memory, in someone's honor for a milestone occasion, anything at all. So I'm seeing a lot of good hands there too. Perfect. So of course that's been the other main component of what people first think of when they think of Jewish National Fund. And again, the hope of today is that we're going to explore the history and expand on just those things, which still continue today and laid the foundation for the work that we have been doing for the past 120 years and hopefully for the next 120 as well. But to go back, we have who was the very first tree planter in Israel. This is a verse from the book of Genesis, where we have, it's of course the way that Bible is put out, they use pronouns. So this just says, he planted a tamarisk at Beersheba and invoked there the name of God, the everlasting God. So in the chat, or if you could see that way, if anyone knows who fills in this blank, who was this person? And if you can unmute, I guess that's okay, as long as you can keep track of it. If you don't want to put it into the chat, I think that's fine. I'm gonna make this a little bit interactive. All right, if we're not doing that, okay, that's fine. So this was Abraham, and right in the very beginning of laying down one of the first acts to have the land of Israel become, again, well before the establishment of the state, thousands of years ago. And this is a picture actually of Abraham's Well, which is a site that's actually run by Jewish National Fund that is a tourist attraction, and you can learn more about Abraham and the ancient ties to the land. Fast forwarding to 1901, you have the Fifth Zionist Congress, and this is where we see the establishment of a fund that is going to fulfill that dream of Abraham to reclaim the promised land for the Jewish people. And it took until that point, the fifth one, so they had to meet several times before Theodore Herzl stood in front and said, I can't take this anymore. We have to put our money where our mouth is and start to reclaim this land and solve the Jewish problem of anti-Semitism that we've seen and reclaim our national homeland, historic national homeland. And that's indeed what happened. So we often say that the first fundraiser for JNF was the hat of Theodore Herzl that was being distributed as legend has it, to the panelists, to the congressional members of that Fifth Zionist Congress. And of that land that was purchased, a total over 700,000 acres of land at that time, or going through by the time all was said and done, which was 14% of the land at the time. And I have some maps to help you understand fully what this is. This was also addressed by Dr. Ken Stein, who spoke was a scholar in residence in the last year as well, and who really shed light on this too. So what you're seeing here on the left-hand side are, with the green and blue, those are the tracts of land that was owned by Jewish land. So includes some from Jewish National Fund, some from others, but all that was Jewish land. And then on the other side, you see that the greenish blue, which became the plan of partition, which was, as you can see, is a perfectly mirrored overlap based on what that purchased land was. So that really did lay the foundation for what would be the Jewish state, and for this plan of partition, the Arab state. As we know, that's not how things happened, but it would not be established in that way had it not been for the purchasing of land and for the cultivation of that land that really did lay that foundation. So, a common question that I often hear is, if this organization was founded to purchase the land of Israel, to rebuild the land, why trees? Why is that what makes something important, instead of just putting houses, putting roads, anything else that you use to build up a state? What is it specifically about trees? So at the time, under Ottoman rule, with Turkish law, there was a law on the books that if land was not cultivated or developed, anyone at the time, squatters, maybe not the nicest way to say it, but you could claim that land by adverse possession. And so if you planted the tree, that demonstrated the ownership of the land at the time. So as soon as you laid those roots down, that's how you were able to claim that land for yourself, and to say that this is Jewish land versus unowned land versus Arab land, what was happening at the time. So it was a very specific tool, it's not by coincidence, and that's exactly what led to it. And in that time, we have over 260 million trees from the very first time that trees were planted in 1903. Again, we're not doing the microphones, so I would have asked, you can think in your head, how long, if you had 1 second for every tree that has been planted, how long is 260 million seconds? This is just to give an idea of what the scope of this amount of time was. So give you a minute to think in your head how long that might be. And if you were thinking around 8 years, you are correct. 8.24 years, so 8.25. That's, again, just to give an idea of the scope of just how many trees that is. And what that translates to on the ground as well is over 100,000 acres of natural woodlands, in addition to the land that is being used for other purposes. And rather than harvesting, the Jewish National Fund continues to plant as well. Again, continues to this day, of course. And because we're coming up on the 120th anniversary, it'd be interesting to see what happened on the 60th anniversary. And at the time, the occupant of the White House was John F. Kennedy. And he wrote a letter to the head of the JNF at that time, and zoomed in it a little bit, and I can just read a selection from it, referring to the director at the time, that this fund represents one of Zionism's most constructive achievements in human welfare and social development. You have made it possible for many Americans to join an important and lasting cooperative enterprise of freedom. I hope that your meetings in Washington have been successful in projecting new opportunities and programs for the future. So that even then, that showing the long history, and this is something that you can come across in leading up to our anniversary this coming year. Found that very interesting as well. So I want to show a brief video before I go into some of the details that's bringing us now up to the present and explaining a little bit more about what we do. But with everything else, everything has to start with a vision.
It all begins with a vision. Creating a bright and prosperous future for the land and people of Israel is Jewish National Fund's vision. The vision we build upon every day. To create change, you need a vision. A vision of lush and breathtaking forests where once was only rocky and brown land. A vision of transforming the Negev and the Galilee, areas filled with pioneering spirit and determination, but faced with economic challenges. We're helping these areas reach their potential by creating jobs, housing, tourism, and quality of life opportunities, injecting a vitality that is transforming them into places people want to live. Vision for us to speak our values, leaving no one behind. A vision of quenching the thirst of Israel's population and allowing the agricultural economy to thrive by bolstering Israel's water security with reservoirs, drip irrigation, and river rehabilitation. A vision that took Israel to recycling 85% of its water today. A vision that searches for solutions that will make a better tomorrow. From state-of-the-art greenhouses to flourishing pepper and flower farms, to high-tech labs that are working on medical breakthroughs. A vision of a continuum that engages at every age, from the time you're born through adulthood and beyond, ensuring that we are raising tomorrow's leaders today. A vision that understands that a nation must know its past to create a stronger future, that the stories of our history are preserved to be retold for generations to come. Since 1901, Jewish National Fund has been guided by a vision of a bright, beautiful future for the land and people of Israel. A vision that Jewish National Fund delivers on year after year. Be a part of our vision. Join us.
So now we're going to go into a little more detail into what we've seen and each of those 7 project areas, which with this being the week of Hanukkah starting tomorrow night, we're going to go over and see how each corresponds with one bonus at the end. So the 7 plus the 1 to represent the 8 lights of Hanukkah and the different ways that Jewish National Fund USA is a shining light to the land and the people of Israel. So for the 7 areas, project domains or areas that we focus on, we have community building, disabilities and special needs, research development, education and advocacy, water solutions, heritage site preservation, and forestry and green innovations. So let's take it one by one and give some small insights into each of them as they come, again, with a little bonus at the end. So for our first light, our first project, spoke about more in the beginning, the forestry and green innovations. It's to say it again, what role that has played both historically and today in growing, both planting and currently growing the land of Israel. There are some other programs that fall under this area, namely the Fire Authority of Israel. And so this is something that, of course, has continued to be something that we're very, very proud of. We are working directly with both professional and volunteer firefighters that are part of the authority. And unfortunately, we see that not all fires are naturally occurring, that this past summer, there were over 600 fires that were caused by inflammatory floating, either balloons or different types of flotations that came through the air from the Gaza Strip and terrorists there that were seeking to do harm. And it takes a special kind of way. You can't just bring in a giant truck into a place like that. They need, like you see here, a water pump that's on somebody's back or on a vehicle that can go to a different place and be nimble to fight those types of fires. And we've been able to provide that. And I should note as well that here in Sarasota, we've collaborated with the Federation of Sarasota Manatee, specifically on this project. There are fire trucks that are dedicated, that have been serving Beit Shemesh and Netanya. And I'm happy to say that in the last year, they spent over 200 hours outside of the station, answering 263 calls when needed. And that's a direct result of the collaboration with the Federation and, of course, the donors here in the area. So I want to give that special shout out too. For the second candle, community building, This is so the first one maybe been bringing a light by extinguishing light. This is a way where we're lighting up the periphery of Israel, where you have 80% of the country of Israel falls in what's known as the periphery, even though a fraction of the population actually lives in those areas. So you mostly have the coastal plain is where 90% of the population lives, but that's on such a small percentage of the inhabitable land throughout the north and south. So it's been the work and the vision of Jewish National Fund to populate those other areas through our Blueprint Negev and Go North initiatives. And just to highlight a couple of what those feature, this is something that's going to be upcoming in the north of Israel, Kiryat Shemona area in the north of Israel, the Galilee Culinary Institute. And this is really going to put Israel on the map in the culinary world when it opens within the next year or so. The CEO is the bearded gentleman holding with his beautiful family. And it's really not only going to revitalize the area of Kiryat Shemona to bring in jobs and housing opportunities for that area, it's also going to, as I said, to put Israel on the map within the culinary world, where it's not just a cooking school, you're teaching them. We already had the first class sell out, even though the doors have not even opened. They've only just broken ground. And that's a very exciting opportunity we're looking forward to. One that may be more familiar to people, this is now going to south in Sderot, which is in proximity to the aforementioned Gaza Strip, where they're unfortunately subject to the terrorists' rain of rocket fire and other inflammatory devices. We coordinated to build an indoor playground so that the children of that area can play safely and able to be kids, rather than having their childhood being taken away from them in such a way. And here's a shot of the inside of it with the rock hall and different gyms and bouncing and a music room. And it gives the opportunity for such a resilient population that they don't want to leave, that is their home. And this gives them opportunity to raise their families with some measure of safety. And another initiative that will be coming up in that same area, actually in Beersheba, so a little bit further out to the south. This is going to be a global village, Zionist global village, as it's being called. We just launched it this past week. It is the most ambitious nonprofit. It's actually 3 times the price to build it as Yad Vashem in terms of the scope and what we're hoping and dreaming what this will be about. Just launched this week. It will be a world-class convention center. It will be the southern campus of our education capabilities, as well as launching the first ever academic for adult education center. And so it's something that we launched about, so I want to mention that as well. And one other program that really touched close to home to me as well, and to many, this is Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is an affiliate organization. So JNF USA works with over 24 affiliate already existing groups on the ground, and we work with them, collaborate with them, and assist them to whatever work they need and to provide the assistance that way. So in this instance, some people might be surprised to learn or not be surprised to learn that during the last few months with a worldwide pandemic, there has been a exponential increase of calls and attention given towards making Aliyah, both in terms of who seeking interest in application, fulfilling applications, and even with quarantines intact, and even with Israel, of course, facing its own challenges with different waves of the virus. And Aliyah has not been impeded in any way. And I want to share this example that was shared in the Jerusalem Post. This is George and Dorothy Lowenstein. George on the left is 86 years old, a Holocaust survivor. He was born in Germany. He actually found refuge in the Philippines under Japanese occupation after the war. He now resides in West Palm Beach, right here in Florida. But he and his wife made the decision that they want to be in Israel with their family. They have children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren there. And if all goes according to plan, they'll be moving there later this month and want to be a part of their lives. So it's not only the young families and entrepreneurs that are providing the brain trust and lone soldiers and physicians. It's also people that just want to be reunited with their families and to go home, and we provide that opportunity. So next, light, and this is a way of bringing light unto the nations and shining a bright light for the world to learn by the example, which is research development. So any number of innovations around ecology, environment, energy, and another one of the affiliate partners that we have on this front is the Arava Institute, working in the south of Israel. And one of their programs that is one of the more inspirational one is the excuse me, the Arava Institute Center for Agricultural Training. So this is where they bring in students from across the world, some countries that don't even have diplomatic relations with Israel, from sub-Saharan Africa, from Southeast Asia. And they come and learn in Israel, live in Israel, and go back to their home communities and take hold of and implement the best practices that they learn from agriculture, or start their own companies, and of course become the best ambassadors for Israel. So it's not only working on the ground with Arabs, with Palestinians, for finding a solution of the ecology issues here, or here being Israel, it's also exporting it throughout the world. And so it's something I find really, really inspiring. And a related project area of also sending a light into the nations is our water solutions. So very similarly, as we heard in the opening video, Israel recycles 85% of its water. It's the world leader in that category. But that's not good enough. One of the goals we have is to get it to 95% and just do that much better. And of course, to expand that as another lesson that the world can learn for other countries that are facing water challenges, to explore and to implement water solutions throughout the world. And that's also including in Israel, working with the Bedouin community in the south of Israel, and introducing a water reservoir, I should say, implementing a wastewater treatment center, so that the farmers and the nomadic people such as themselves are able to, again, implement those solutions, and it leads to a greater cooperation and peace in that area. Next candle up, candle number 5, heritage site preservation. So the idea is we have not just ancient sites throughout Israel that everyone thinks of when you go to visit. There are that's only part of the picture. And actually any sites that are not within an ancient, after a certain period in time, have to fall under a different organization, a different category. And so JNF USA has moved in to cover aspects of the land that tell the Zionist story. So from the early Zionists that have moved in the early 20th century through to what happened during 1948-1949 War of Independence, and as well as sites and different places afterwards. And one of those sites from afterwards is Ammunition Hill, as just one example. So this was the site in 1967 that was the pivotal battleground for the reunification of the old city of Jerusalem. And there is established a museum dedicated to the memory of those who fell, and to the survivors, to the veterans that are still living today, for their comrades. And we have a local connection too that I want to highlight as well, that what you see here on the right is the flag that was the flag that was flown at the Kotel after the unification of June 7th, 1967. And it was preserved here in the museum with the illustration of the Kotel that's behind it from in the old city. And this section of the museum is from the Toby and Noel Siegel, right here in Sarasota, has a dedicated section of the museum for that. So I wanted to, again, highlight the local connection and tell such an important story about the defender of Israel in our time. The next area, which is bringing light and bringing people out of the shadows that have disabilities and special needs, which for too long, for too many years, have been in darkness, have been shoved aside, have not been given equal treatment in any walk of life, and whether that is neurodiversity, so on the autism spectrum, whether it's a physical handicap, audio, visual, anything along those lines. For too long, even in Israel, there has not been the proper treatment and equality that these people so deserve, and that also unleashes the potential that that is inherent within them, which of course is inherent in every human being. And so there are, in particular, 4 different organizations that JNF partners with on the ground. The Red Mountain Riding Center, you see the horse up in the corner. We're helping, and that's for therapeutic care and treatment through horse therapy and how effective that is. And again, that's for both physical and mental special needs, and what effective therapy that is, and putting that forward. And that's located on Kibbutz Grofit in Israel. Keeping it in the south, we have, this is actually an outdated photo. It was known as Ale Negev, now known as Adi Negev. That just happened the other week. But regardless, this is a center where they have centers all over Israel, but in the Negev is where JNF has its partnership. And this is a rehabilitation center for children and their families that require long-term full care. And it was one of the first new hospitals built in Israel in decades, and is able to service the people of the South. Instead of having to drive several hours to go to the center of the country, they can receive the care that they need right then and there. And of course, that work has continued over the past few months, just without, unfortunately, having the volunteers that are joining in there that come from abroad and stay on the campus and learn the lessons as well of the resiliency and the strength of these individuals and their families. On the bottom left, we have representatives from Special in Uniform, which is a program that has not only inducted 400 youths that are Army age that would otherwise not have a chance to serve in the Army, which of course is the mark of any Israeli, and for people to be excluded from that is not only deeply hurtful and shameful, but is detracting for employment opportunities further ahead. So not only do they get a chance to serve in the Army, and not just out of pity, they are put to work because of the skills that they can offer. For example, for if someone is in the autism spectrum, they are working, for example, one is working in the intelligence community, where they have, for people on the spectrum, some folks have something where they can concentrate for long periods of time, look at a picture of terrain in the desert, and they can see something very, very specific detail, and it turns out that can be a threat. There's something that's harmful that's coming your way, and they're able to spot it, and then it can be taken care of. So, and like I said, they are given opportunities, vocational opportunities, to become productive and full members of Israeli society. And that's a wonderful opportunity that they have as well. Excuse me. And finally, on the bottom right is an example of Lotem, which is making Israel accessible, not only in different heritage sites and museums, and making sure that for audio impaired, visual impaired, and physical handicap can all attend the different inside and museums and the such, also for nature and for the hiking trails and to see the beauty within Israel. And this is a picture of Raz, who was in a car accident from a young age and was unable to go to the hikes that he loved to do with his family. And through his dedication and hard work, for being turned away, became a registered tour guide and now leads his own tours on the paths, thanks to Lotem, that was able to create those sites that are accessible to all. And just again, that's just one small story of so many from these organizations that are doing such good work. And the final of the 7 areas that we're looking at is education advocacy, which, excuse me, I would argue is one of the most, if not the most important. that is focusing and sending a bright future, so lighting the way for a bright future. That's what that seventh candle and light brings. And this starts from a young age where JNF Education Department will provide curriculum for Hebrew schools, day schools related to Israel, Tu B'Shvat being the favorite, of course, with the celebration of trees, but also Israeli independence. Also instilling values about tzedakah and those blue boxes, the mascot called Blue Box Bob, to helping learn those lessons that are so, and values that are so important. In the middle picture of the Alexander Muss High School in Israel, which is a high school study abroad program that is non-denominational in English and teaching Zionist history chronologically from Abraham to Zionism as an opportunity to, and there have been over 30,000 alumni as a product of that, then go on to college campuses and into high leadership as well, and have that installation of knowledge all the way through to becoming a member of JNF Future, which is the Young Professional Division of Jewish National Fund, seen here on the bottom, planting a tree, a part of a trap. And this is the fastest growing demographic within Jewish National Fund, we're very happy to say, because these are the folks that will be, they're already parents themselves and will one day be the grandparents and the future board members, leaders, CEOs, and everything else that comes with it. So it's so important that they continue to stay involved and a part of the Jewish story and the Jewish people and connection to Israel. And I want to note as well that we're not only focusing on the Jewish people as important to bring into the story of Israel and the lessons thereof. There are two programs that focus specifically on the college campuses, one of which is Caravan for Democracy on the left-hand side, which brings students from beyond the Jewish faith to Israel, and they are brought for a free trip, leaders from across the country, the student athletes and leaders of the student government, and they come for the first time to Israel and have the tough conversations, and they learn from being there on the ground, not just what they're reading, not just what protests one way or another are seeing, they're seeing it for themselves. And similarly, they're going back and they're becoming the best ambassadors and really truly understanding the situation for themselves and be able to really explain that very clearly, having seen it themselves. And a very similar program is done for professors and faculty on the college campuses as well, and that's what's the faculty fellowship. And on the right-hand side, you see a picture of some of those. They are matched by department, so the biology will meet with the biologists, and poetry, etc. And there too, they are building connections, building networks, and so that when there is an anti-Israel movement that may be happening within the faculty ranks, they can say, well, wait a second, I have my friend there, and I know that this can't stand and that this isn't right, and they are able to stand up for it, again, from their own personal experience. So it's another aspect of it that is just so important, telling the story. And I know that I don't have to say too much more about this because the values that we say here are clear right here at Beth Shalom. I was delighted to see in the paper just the other day that the Men's Club, Passport Israel program, and the Sisterhood are sending right of our very own, the Alpert twins, will be partially funded for their upcoming trip right here from Sarasota to Israel. And that program has been, I should say as well, despite the challenges and lockdowns, we have a full campus and they've been able to have that experience, and we as long as regulations allow, be continuing to send as many students as we can on these experiences. So I was doubly proud to see this publicized too. So I couldn't help but sharing that as well. I also can't help but share that this is in a true coming full circle moment that I myself am an alumnus of the Alexander Muss program. These are a couple of photos from my own experience from my junior year of high school. Of course, on a JNF outing on the left-hand side, with the Dead Sea behind me on the right, and in the middle, reading Torah at Masada at the Beit Knesset, at the, that is a part of the Masada site, standing over there with the Nike hat on the left, being a good gabbai over there. So it's just to say that having that experience where, seeing the land for myself, even though I had been to Israel on trips with family, but to be there with my friends and to see the experiences for myself, to do homestays with families in the south near Gaza, to meet Ethiopians, Russians, Arabs, Bedouins, and to have those experiences, Jerusalem for Yom Kippur, and having all the different weekly trips as a part of it. I actually found an essay that I wrote shortly after coming back from the program, and one of the lines that stood out to me the most is that that I always have had a head for Israel and Judaism, and this program helped me develop a heart for it as well. And so that's just the impact that I can have. And you fast forward 20 or so years later, and here we are. We're working for a Jewish National Fund, which is now we like to say must is us. So it's fully a part of the Jewish National Fund as well. So I did promise an 8th candle because there's only seven program areas. So I'd like to close with some words of Torah because this is Beth Shalom, and I know it's not the Shabbat Shmooze, but looking ahead to the Parsha this week, I wanted to have the chance to be able to share a couple words on the upcoming Parsha and connect it back to Hanukkah, as well as to the importance of education as it pertains to what I had just discussed. And this is a photo as well that in addition to the sending trees, we also have a Be Inscribed program where you can, there is a sofer who is writing a Torah on Masada, and you're able to send a verse, a letter, a passage, the same way that you can send a tree. So that's an opportunity to see that, but onto the Torah. So this is a scene from the Parsha this coming week, and they put into the chat, or if unmute if anybody has, if anyone can name the characters in the scene and what's happening here. No, I stumped you. That's all right. So the Parsha is Vayeshev, and this is when we start the learn about the story of Joseph. So this is Joseph here on the left, and he has been sold into Egypt at this point, being sold as a slave. He finds himself in Egypt, and he is running the household of Potiphar, one of the dignitaries at the time. And he was approached by the wife of Potiphar, and that's the scene that's happening here. It's been captured across the ages. There are many pictures. This is one that's slightly more PG-13 rated to share, but he is approached by the wife to into bed with her, and there's a moment where there is a very special trope that happens in the Torah. It only appears a number of times, and it makes a very waving noise. It's called the sharsheret. And this is explained by the commentators that he was ambivalent about making this decision. He's going back and forth just like it was. And the Talmud actually tells a story that he's about to get into bed with her, and the image of his father Jacob appears to him, and he can no longer go through with this act, and he runs away. And so what does this have to do anything with anything I'm talking about right now? So he finds the strength to refuse, and it's not only through the image of his father, but Nechama Leibowitz writes I think a very moving passage that's based on this, where he finds the strength, and he goes from a spoiled person to someone who is matured and can reject such a call like this, where she writes that he is saved, quote, saved by the fact that he still cherishes the memory of the traditions from his father that have been handed down to him, so that even in the darkness and the remoteness of exile, the image of his father is still hovering in front of him and is saving him from this temptation. So, of course, this came about because the values were instilled, and just underscores the education the value of education, instilling values. And of course, these are the same values that the Maccabees fought for, that we read at this time of year, that this passage, this story that we're reading a few weeks later, about how Joseph came down to Egypt and he never forgot who he was, even many chapters after this. So it just ties back to the importance of passing down the tradition. And I have one last video to share from a film that was actually produced by Steven Spielberg. It's footage from 1947 called Beyond the Blockade. And it just goes to show, going forward to go back, that this is an example of how this has been, the value of education, of instilling values, has been there from even before the founding of Israel, passed down from Joseph at biblical times to today, but then also coming back to Israel in 1947, even before the state was established. So here we go.
At schools like this, the cultural, industrial, and physical training of Jewish youth is carried on. The Jewish educational system of Palestine has no superior in the world. Arab education is paid for by the government, and 70% of the government's money comes from taxes levied on the Jewish citizens of the country. But the Jews maintain their own public school system at their own cost, a system comprising more than 750 schools and 100,000 pupils. But it is an investment that counts, for it is an investment in the health, intelligence, and character of children who will be the citizens of the Jewish Commonwealth of tomorrow. These are children of elementary and high school age. When they leave their preparatory schools, they can look forward to attending the Hebrew Technical Institute in Haifa, the Herzliya Gymnasium in Tel Aviv, and the world-renowned Hebrew University on Jerusalem's Mount Scopus. Most of the Jewish colonies have their own nurseries where the children are given the most expert care.
I can't help but smile every time I see that, and to think about where their parents had just been to, and the land that they will see. And so the final image of the show is, this is a Chanukia that is made from rockets that were fired onto Israel and being reclaimed and repurposed for a celebration of light and of our freedom, and how we were able to instill our values with the Jewish people, for the people in the land of Israel. And it's such a powerful image to close as well. So I thank you very much for your time, and very happy to answer more questions, and in advance a very happy and healthy Hanukkah full of light.
Well, thank you, Josh, for that incredible presentation. You know what, if you would take down your share screen, there we go. All right, I will put up the chat. And hold on one second, please. All right, anyway. Okay, so I don't actually see anything in chat. So if people would please raise their hand, and you can unmute yourselves as you're called upon. Anyone have questions for Josh? Okay, Ronnie, go.
So this is not a question because I thought I thought your presentation covered just so many areas, and it's just wonderful. Just a compliment. I just think, oops, somebody's not muted. I think JNF is doing a lot for Israel, and I'm so pleased to have been made aware of how many areas you're involved in, and and I appreciate your time today, and thank you very much for making this presentation for us. Thank you.
You're so welcome. That's the best thing I can hear is just spreading awareness and to get the story out there of the really incredible, amazing work. And I say before that only just joined myself in a year ago and moved to the area and started this position. And I'm learning more myself every single day through the conversations. And I could give another 45-minute conversation and talk about completely different things. We had a week-long conference, virtual conference this year, and we had I went on for 4 days, and again could still just do more and more. So I appreciate that I was able to tell just a fraction of the story, and hopefully leave some for more next time as well.
Thank you. Yeah, because growing up, all I knew about was the trees. I mean, that was the big push in my day school and in my show when I was a youngster. And I was not aware of all of these other things that JNF is involved in until just last year, 2 years ago. So thank you.
And you know what? That leads into a question I just saw from Elliot is about how many people have had the opportunity or taken the opportunity to plant trees in Israel.
Ooh, seeing good hands. Wonderful,
Well,
wonderful.
Yeah, I should raise my hand. What am I talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone else? Questions? Frank, go. Unmute yourself. Frank Levy.
Well, I remember in Hebrew school, I was constantly, bringing the pishka, or they had the little raffle tickets and things like that. I used to stand wait for my mother coming off the subway and stand with the pishka or with the little tickets and sell them for JNF.
Right, the tickets. We hear about the stamps as well. That was another tool. So, many different ways.
Right, and I bought trees, and we have a certificate that somebody planted trees for when my mother-in-law passed away, hanging in our house. So, very close with that all my life. So it's a very good organization, and I'm proud to have you as our representative here.
Thank you so much.
Carol and Michael Krasnow, did you want to say something about something about a tree certificate?
I was just in response to Elliot that when I was a kid, I had one of those cans to put the coins in, and I got my certificate that I got a tree planted in my honor. But when I went to Israel, they couldn't show it to me.
That's another question I do hear, and like we said, 250,000 trees, and it would be pretty challenging to line up every certificate with every tree. But you're not alone in saying, I want to see my tree, the one I planted. And it's as you can imagine, pretty challenging to keep that.
It's that tree over there. Joan Brody.
Josh, I too commend you for a lovely presentation. What impresses me most in contemporary issues about JNF is the desalinization and all the work that's done with what I find that so impressive. And I burst with pride because we share it with others who are throwing those rockets at us, and it's there for the whole world. It's not just for our people. So I truly commend you. If I could just ask you a personal question, because we're Landsman. I lived in Philadelphia for 60 years, grew up in Oxford Circle around the corner from a rabbi and Clara Mellits, and I'm just wondering, would that have been your grandfather?
Not my grandfather.
No, but
it's not a very common name, as you can imagine.
It is not. That's why I immediately made that connection. They lived on Kerper Street with their 5 children, and I just thought, well, gee, maybe that is part of your family.
It very well may be. We it could be a cousin over there, but I think we should discuss further offline.
Anyone else? Susan?
Thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. But I just wanted to say that on our last trip, which was 2 or 3 years ago, We planted trees in 3 different places along the way. It was very special. Thank you again. It was a wonderful presentation. I agree with Joan. The water stuff, I think, is very important.
So I would, there actually, now that you're the second person that raised it up, one thing I didn't discuss in the presentation is one of the ways that we've been able to engage and keep keep bringing Israel to you, because we can't go to Israel right now. And one of the ways we've been able to do that is virtual tours of Israel. And we are running actually for the first 3 months of 2021, where it's specifically themed is exploring water solutions. So it's, and so I'm very happy to send more information about that, or looking online on the JNF virtual tours water. It'll come right up, and that's an opportunity that's a very specific themed one, but it's been ongoing for the last few months, where for an hour or so a day, for 4 days, 4 or 5 days a week, having a live tour guide and be able to support their livelihoods, because the fees go directly 100% to them to support them and their families when that industry has been so decimated. And so I'm happy to say that we're having ones that are specifically for water that's coming up in the next couple of months, if that's a particular issue that's of interest to you.
Anyone else? Hands? Anyone? All right, well, I think we've had one of the more informative, one of the better presentations in our history of doing these, and I thank you, Josh, very much.